We have a fantastic audience in here tonight. Thank you for joining us live on BBC One. This is the last show of the current series. But first off, a big political interview with lots of you will no doubt will want to talk about. It seems a day hardly goes by without another row between the DUP and Sinn Féin. There's been growing speculation that tensions between Peter Robinson and Martin McGunniess are at boiling point. Well, I've been talking to the Deputy First Minister. We covered a lot of ground, including the Stormont bus stops and the big issues at the heart of the problems. And I started by asking Martin McGunniess about sharing power with the First Minister.
I have a working relationship with Peter. I'm in a position of Deputy First Minister for 7 years now, and it all started with the relationship with Ian Paisley. And to the surprise of many people, Ian Paisley and I had not just a good working relationship, we had a good personal relationship, which has existed to this very day.
And I wonder, did people in the DUP like that?
Well, I mean, at the time that Ian Paisley left as First Minister, and there was a lot of people within unionism outlining the reasons for that. One which was cited was his age, and the other that was cited was that people at important levels within the DUP didn't like the friendly relationship that he and I had.
Do you think that's part of why they got rid of him?
Well, that was cited to me as one of the reasons why he had to go. Now, I don't know if that's accurate or not. The reality is that in the aftermath of that, there was quite clearly a decision taken within the DUP that they shouldn't be seen to be getting too close to Sinn Féin.
Do you care?
Oh, I do care, because I think that an essential phase of the whole process of conflict resolution is the importance of reconciliation between political opponents and between everybody within our community.
But Martin, Peter doesn't need to like you, he just needs to work with you.
Well, I'm not saying I dislike Peter, and I don't think Peter has ever said he dislikes me either. I think we've always had, I think, a very civilised and cordial relationship, a working relationship.
Correspondents and political commentators are saying that you're not talking to each other at the moment, that it's never been more toxic.
Well, that's total nonsense. There has never been a day, either in this building in Stormont Castle or Parliament buildings, where Peter Robinson and I haven't spoken.
Can you trust him?
Well, I mean, prior to the decision of Mays Long Cash, I met with Peter a couple of days before that, before he went to the United States on his holidays, which he was absolutely entitled to do. And as far as I was concerned, the project to build the Peace Building and Conflict Resolution Centre was still on the agenda. And then out of the blue, a letter comes from the States. I'm not contacted, I don't get a telephone call to say that the plug has been pulled on the project. So from that perspective, I'm obviously very wary.
It's a pretty fundamental question, so I'll ask it again. Do you trust him?
I don't trust him in regard to that particular issue. Apart from that, it's no secret that there was a major difference of opinion between him and myself in relation to the attitude of the DUP in relation to the violence that was happening on the streets, the attacks that were happening on the police, and the threats that were being made against isolated communities. And
you know exactly what they will be saying, and many unionists in the country will be saying. They'll be saying they're not going to take any lessons from you about violence.
Well, I mean, I think I'm glad you asked me that question, because, you know, they went into government with me 7 years ago on the basis that we were looking to the future and not the past. And I know that there's always a danger if I speak out against things that are happening on the streets in the here and now, that my past will be upcast to me.
You'll be accused of being a hypocrite.
Well, people will accuse me of being a hypocrite, but they will be.
How can you accuse anyone of supporting violence when you did it for a lot of your life?
Well, you see, the line on conflict in this country was drawn when we had the Good Friday Agreement, And I have since negotiated other agreements with the DUP, particularly the St Andrews Agreement and the Hillsborough Agreement, which saw, fundamental changes to Republicans' attitude to the use of violence here in the north. As far as I'm concerned, violence, conflict of any description was a no-no. Our duty and responsibility as politicians was to stand up for the agreements that we made. I made an agreement that I would give 100% support, but not uncritical support, to the PSNI in the context of the changes that took place. And for that, I have been threatened with death by so-called dissident Republicans. My home has been attacked. My wife has been verbally abused in the streets by these people. But I have stood up, and no one can question my commitment to supporting the police or to the protection of the peace process and the institutions of which I am a part.
I'm not sure about that, because I can put questions to you about that, because I wonder, were you found wanting recently when Gerry Adams was arrested? Because I saw you standing on the platform. I saw Bobby Story. How dare they touch our leader? I saw you smiling. I saw you clapping.
That they would dare touch our party leader, the leader of Irish Republicanism.
I saw a press conference in which, some people read out of your comments that you were maybe going to withdraw your support for policing. So you can be questioned. It's not an unwavering support for the PSNI. You were tested.
Well,
how dare they touch our leader? How dare who touch our leader?
Well,
the authorities, the police.
They weren't my words. Let's deal with what
Did you not clap?
Let's deal with what I said.
You clapped.
Let's deal with what I said during the course of the press conference. And you mentioned some people said, you were one of those people that said that I had said during the course of the press conference that Sinn Féin would withdraw support for the police. That was never said during the course of the press conference. So there was never any suggestion during the course of the press conference that we would, why would we withdraw support from an organisation that we were very much instrumental in bringing about in terms of the negotiations that brought about the new beginning to policing. It just wouldn't make sense.
Let's come back to the current situation up here. You read some of the public comments from Peter Robinson about you. For example, in recent times during the Muslim controversy, he said about you, he said, "I won't take lectures from a self-confessed leader of a bloody terrorist organisation on equality, tolerance and mutual respect for all." So, how could the public read anything into that other than this relationship between the two of you is anything but workmanlike? He's not taking lessons from you on equality, tolerance, mutual respect. So what's left?
If Peter felt that way about me, then I don't understand why he was involved in discussions with me about how we build together a united community. So I just thought that was an attempt to deflect attention from the remarks made by Pastor McConnell and the way in which Peter handled that.
If I was listening to just this interview and didn't understand the bigger picture, Nolan, I would think that you and Peter were sitting here having wee buns every day. You're at loggerheads over education. You cannot make it work together. You cannot find agreement. You're at loggerheads over welfare reform. You're at loggerheads over the Ardoyne issue. You're fighting with each other every day of the week.
I'm not at loggerheads with the DUP and welfare reform. I'm at loggerheads with the British government on what's called welfare reform.
Come on, we've got devolution in Northern Ireland.
No, hold on a minute.
We've got it here, but it's your responsibility,
Stephen,
the DUP.
Let me make this point, because I think this is a very important point. David Cameron has now been British Prime Minister for almost 4 years, around 4 years. Sinn Féin as a political party has never had one meeting with David Cameron.
How many have you asked for?
Countless meetings over 4 years, and he has resisted doing that. He was found out recently, and I found him out, in terms of the fact that private meetings were taking place with the DUP. Not a private meeting, private meetings were taking place with the DUP. And I wrote to him about 2 weeks ago, very critical of his lack of engagement in this process.
What did you say to him?
Well, I criticised his stance on welfare reform. I criticised his disengagement from the Haas process, the fact that the British government, whenever Haas came out with its proposals, didn't support the Haas proposals. And of course, I said other things in the letter. And I've since had a communication from David Cameron that he is now going for the first time to meet with Jerry Adams and myself.
When?
I think that's I think it'll happen very, very soon. For a British Prime Minister not to have met Sinn Féin for 4 years, I think was a terrible mistake.
What do you think has changed his mind?
Hopefully now will be corrected. Because I publicly criticised him. Because I said in the United States of America that I had met President Obama more often in the White House than I had met with the British Prime Minister.
So do you think he's been shamed into it?
I think he obviously recognises that he's vulnerable on the issue, and it's significant that the agreement now from Downing Street to meet with Jerry Adams and myself has come in the aftermath of my exposure of the private meetings that were taking place with the DUP. And then that begs the other question about what were these meetings about, particularly as we're now less than a year before the next British general election. And of course, this place in the north of Ireland was, we had our problems many years ago whenever the Ulster Unionists had 9 or 10 MPs at Westminster. John Major was the British Prime Minister, and the peace process didn't move forward because he was dependent upon those votes. If we are going to find ourselves in a scenario where David Cameron's strategy is being dictated by trying to get the votes of DUP MPs at Westminster, I think he does a grave disservice to what is widely seen as one of the most successful peace processes in the world today.
Well, you're a strategist. You know that the election next year could be very close, and you know that Cameron might need the DUP MPs. You know it.
Yeah, I think he also needs the peace process, and he needs the peace process to work, and he needs to play his part in that. And
that's not in jeopardy, is it?
He has not played. No, the peace process, in my opinion, is rock solid.
So therefore, what's your leverage
to
Cameron?
What is in jeopardy is how we move forward to what I think is an essential stage of the peace process, and that is the reconciliation stage.
And we'll move on to one of probably the biggest issues facing us in Northern Ireland, the past. And how do we reach compromise with each other, all of us living here? Sometimes leadership is about that personal leader being seen to do something. Peter Robinson made a personal apology.
Again, great to see you.
Do you think it would be well received if you made an apology, finally, to people for what you did in your past? Imagine how the unionist community would receive that. Imagine how they would look upon that. If you said the time's right for me to say sorry.
I think I've done a lot of things over the course of recent years.
Have you done that?
Which have, let me put it this way. In terms of the past, I am sorry for the people who have been hurt as a result of the conflict.
Many people have commented about what it's like to be in a room with you. I've heard lots of them say that you can be charming and you can be disarming. And I would quite like to get to know just how sorry you are, genuinely. And I'm not talking about for everything that's happened in the past. So for what you have contributed to in your past and the victims that you played a part in creating, how sorry are you?
Well, I think
personally,
sorry can be a hard word for people to say, and I've already, said that to you.
But how sorry are you, Martin?
It can also be easy for people to say, and it can also be very insincere when it is said.
Which is the purpose of my question. How sorry are you?
But I think I would prefer to be judged on the contributions that I have made to resolving this conflict over the course of over 20 years.
Sure.
I mean, I was Sinn Féin's chief negotiator in the Good Friday talks. Yeah. I was Sinn Féin's chief negotiator in the St Andrews talks.
Let the people.
I was Sinn Féin's chief negotiator in the Hillsborough talks. I'm the chief negotiator that dealt with things like getting the IRA to call a ceasefire, getting the IRA to put their arms beyond use, getting support for the police. I think that's how people are judged. They're judged on the contribution that they've made.
Fair enough.
As opposed to the words that they say.
Fair enough, but that's Martin McGunniess, the politician, okay?
Yeah.
The purpose of my question is to allow the electorate and every citizen in Northern Ireland, because you're at the top of government here, to look into your eyes now and understand Martin McGunniess, the man, the individual, the person, the human being.
Yeah.
How sorry are you?
Well, how sorry do you want me to be?
I want you to be as sorry as you are,
well,
as you genuinely are.
I think
what's in your heart?
My contribution to the peace process clearly says to everybody that I believe that conflict should be a thing of the past, that the conflict that existed was terrible, that it was awful, and it was awful that so many people from all sections of our community suffered as a result of it. And I have dedicated my life to changing all of that to such a point where my life has been threatened. Am I prepared to die for the peace process? I'll die tomorrow morning for the peace process without any fear whatsoever.
The things that you're sorry for, do they trouble you? Do they actually get to you?
Well, individual situations don't trouble me. What troubles me is that we were all part of a conflict, and that was very troubling indeed.
Finally, Peter Robinson, there was speculation about when he's going to go and when he's going to retire. How long have you got?
Well, I mean, I've always said that, you know, the great passion in my life is the success of the peace process. And, you know, the peace process isn't over. The next stage of the peace process is reconciliation. I think I've been involved in important acts of reconciliation. Meeting the Queen 2 years ago in Belfast, meeting her again at Windsor. Do you
enjoy Windsor?
Well, enjoy is not the right word. I mean, how would you have liked to be trussed up in a white shirt with tabby bows and
don't think I'd fit
all sorts of tails? Well, you might fit it now, given that you've been so successful over the course of the last.
Did you feel comfortable there?
No, to be quite honest, I mean, I would say there was a lot of Republicans who probably didn't feel comfortable with me being at the banquet. I think that, you know, symbolically, big acts of reconciliation are very important.
So long have you got? What do you give yourself? Now 5 years? Could you stick at that one?
I'm going to continue to contribute to the peace process. I mean, I have no thoughts.
Now you are ducking this question, aren't you?
I'm not ducking.
You must have a time scale when you'll go out and walk your dog more.
Well, I'm looking forward very much to fly fishing on a regular basis, which I don't manage to do because of the challenges of this job. No, I think it comes down to your health. It comes down to your family. It comes down to the health of your family also. I mean, I don't know how my wife has stuck me for. We'll be married 40 years in November.
She probably sticks you because you're never there.
Well, for me, she's a saint, you know. I'm 64 years of age, just passed. I'll continue on until we see the sort of progress that I think the vast majority want to see. Now, I think also I have to say, given the events of, particularly over the course of the last 18 months, you know, things have been a big disappointment here. I mean, there's nothing normal about the institutions. You know, I've spoken in the past about the fact that at the Assembly, and it comes back to the point I made earlier about Ian Paisley and about the reasons why, one of the reasons which was proffered to me as to why they moved him as First Minister. You know, I still meet DUP MLAs who won't even look at me, who won't even say hello.
Who?
No, I'm not going to name any individual, but there's a right amount of them. The reality is that there are still some people there who think that in order to ensure that they have a mandate that will support them consistently, that it's much better to be in conflict and in confrontation than in reconciliation mode. I'm in reconciliation mode, but Stephen, I can't do reconciliation myself. There isn't a day that passes that Peter Robinson and I don't talk. Now, against all the odds, I've been in government now for 7 years in the office of First and Deputy First Minister, first with Ian Paisley and now with Peter Robinson. I think that's an achievement of some sort. But, you know, good work, but there's an awful lot more to do.
And those trips up from Derry every morning, you've got the radio show to listen to, of course. You still shouting at the car?
I've become very philosophical about this guy, Stephen Nolan. I think at the beginning he was outrageous, but it seems to me he's made a bit of an attempt in recent times to be a bit fairer. I think it comes with losing all that weight.
Martin, thank you.
Thank you.
Right, so no doubt that there will be quite a lot of Twitter traffic, and you'll be wanting to talk about this tonight. At Stephen Nolan on Twitter. You'll see all the details coming up on your screen as to how you can get in touch with the programme. And there was some breaking news in there within that interview. So Martin McGunniess says that both he and Gerry Adams are going to meet the British Prime Minister in the very near future. He says it will be the first time in David Cameron's 4 years in office that he's met with a Sinn Féin delegation. The state of the peace process and welfare reform, he says, will be on the agenda. And he's accused, William Humphreys is with us this evening from the DUP to talk about other issues, but just your reaction to this news tonight that David Cameron is to meet Martin McGunniess and Gerry Adams for the first time during his term in office.
Well, I don't think it's any big issue, Stephen. I wonder why it's taken 4 years for the leaders of the second largest party in Northern Ireland to meet the British Prime Minister.
Well, they've asked and Cameron's refused to meet them. They've asked.
The truth of the matter is it's good that they're accepting that he is the Prime Minister of this nation, that they're going to meet him to discuss issues like welfare reform, where they have been extremely irresponsible at Stormont. And I do hope the Prime Minister, when he meets them, makes it very clear to them that in the Queen's speech today in Parliament, the Queen talked about her government and a shared future. And I do hope that David Cameron stresses to Gerry Adams and Martin McGunniess that if they're serious about a shared future in Northern Ireland, that has to be a shared future for everyone in Northern Ireland.
Martin McGunniess has told me it's a red line for Sinn Féin, that they're not going to see disadvantaged people being exploited.
But no one wants to see
with welfare reform.
No one wants to see disadvantaged
They're not going to
people
accept it.
Being disenfranchised or exploited. That's why my party colleague Nelson McCausland has worked hard as the Minister for Social Development to get concessions for this part of the United Kingdom that other parts simply don't have.
And talking about a shared future, he talked there about DUP people who won't even look at him. Are you one of them?
I make it very clear, I go there and do a professional job. It's not about looking at people. I mean, it's nonsense to say people don't look at people walking up and down corridors.
Would you say hello to him in the corridor?
No.
You wouldn't speak to him?
I'm there to do a job, and I'll tell you why. Martin McGunniess talked in an interview about trust. The community I represent, the people in the constituency I represent at Stormont, have a difficulty trusting someone who has admitted that he was a senior official and officer in the IRA, his behaviour the other week when Gerry Adams was held in Antrim Holding Centre was deplorable, and his threatening language.
You're power sharing with him?
Because his party gets the second largest number of votes in Northern Ireland.
Peter Robinson travels around the world with him. Peter and Marty.
Yeah. Well, you've asked me a question, Stephen, and I'm trying to answer it. The fact of the matter is that the people of Northern Ireland voted for Sinn Féin in that number at the last Assembly elections. I would rather they didn't. I would rather they would vote for unionist parties, and I'm delighted that the last election we had only a few weeks ago, the share of the unionist vote went up considerably.
Okay. Well, look, we'll come back to you in a second or two. Let's just have a look, in the meantime, what's still to come in the programme tonight. It's illegal, but it's being allowed to continue. Why are tyres still being burnt on the 11th night bonfires? That's coming up very, very shortly. But first, Orange men have again been barred from parading along a contentious stretch of road in North Belfast. 3 lodges and 2 bands wanted to walk this Saturday along a section of the Crumlin Road. They wanted to complete a parade that was restricted on the 12th of July last year. Serious rioting broke out after that march was stopped. Scores of police officers injured. The DUP's William Humphrey is staying with me to speak about this tonight, and also with us the Republican commentator Chris Donnelly. William, the Parades Commission has said no again.
Yeah, and this is depressing, Stephen. I have to say there's real anger and frustration in the community. This is the new Parades Commission, and the last Parades Commission clearly was a very arrogant commission. Some of its determinations were absolutely illogical. I've been in to meet the Parades Commission twice recently, and I hope that common sense would prevail. It looks to me as what has happened is the Commission today has caved in to the threat of dissident violence, and I think that's something which is hugely regrettable. And
you're not that surprised, are you?
Yes, I am surprised because of the engagement that we had with the Parades Commission and the talks that have been going on in recent months. I hope there would be a positive outcome. Let's be quite clear. There were reasons given that we couldn't have the parade returning home to Ligoneel because of the Giro d'Italia, because of the elections, because there weren't talks. There have been considerable amount of talks going on over the last number of months. There were talks prior to Christmas that Republicans and Nationalists refused to turn up to. March and April there were significant, in-depth, regular talks, and there were talks only in recent weeks. And this outcome clearly shows that what the Commission is about actually copper fastening a veto for Nationalists and Republicans.
So you're going to rubbish the new
Crumlin.
Commission now?
No, well, you see, the truth of the matter is...
You saluted its appointment, did you not?
Well, no,
Your party?
The DUP's position is that the Parades Commission should go. What we welcomed was the fact there were new personnel, hoping there would be new thinking. And I have to say, the engagement, as I've said, that I and party colleagues have had with the Commission in the last number of weeks and months had been positive. And the feedback that people were getting was that they were prepared to engage in a much more meaningful way. And I stress again, I am concerned, party colleagues are concerned, I know my Member of Parliament has stressed today that it looks as if they've caved into the threat of dissident violence.
Chris Donnelly, is it not time for Nationalists just to let them down the road? 10 minutes and it's over. That's it.
I think that's entirely the wrong way to approach this issue, Stephen. For the last year, the Loyalists, with the support of the political leadership of unionism, have behaved in a disgraceful manner. And let's remember where this is. This is the most sensitive sectarian interface in the north of Ireland, between the working class communities of Ardoyne and Shankill. We have had a camp established at Tweddell. This camp has had nightly parades where Loyalist bands have marched up to the interface, playing the famine song and other songs. Flags and banners have been erected. These haven't been erected further down the Woodvale Road or down Tweddell towards Tesco. They've been erected right up at the interface, pointing at the other, pointing at the Catholic. The message is very clear. It has been a message of intolerance, a message of hate. It's been a disgrace.
They're entitled to protest, are they not?
We use that phrase all the time, Stephen. People, are entitled to protest. What they are not entitled to do is try to raise sectarian tensions in a very irresponsible manner. That was what I've already alluded to as a most sensitive sectarian interface.
And you support Camp Tweddell, and it's costing, what, according to the police, £9 million a year?
There's a very...
Policing costs alone.
Very easy resolution to this. 6 minutes it would take 3 lodges and 2 bands to parade along the Crumlin Road, a main arterial route in and out of this city. And how are the Orange Brethren from Ligoneel and Ballysillan to get home? How are they to get to and fro the 12th of July? They have civil rights, they have human rights, and their human rights are being ignored in all of this. And I have to say...
Well, they do get home, don't they? Like, they haven't been...
Well, you see... They
haven't been in a tent since last year.
You can be as flippant as you like.
But I'm being factual. Presumably they have got home.
The fact of the matter is, Stephen, and this is the problem with the BBC and certain sections of the media, those 3 lodges, when they set out on the 12th of July, the Orange Lodge goes to the parade and returns home, and it returns home to its orange property.
Yeah, but just
and they haven't. No, they haven't
in
got back.
case I'm in La La Land, have they actually got in their front door in the last year?
We're talking about the collective that are Orange Lodges, and it's unfortunate that you take that attitude. But yesterday I sat in the chamber during a debate that all parties in the Northern Ireland Assembly supported on racial attacks, and the motion proposed by Sinn Féin included the words, "Firmly opposes racism, discrimination, intolerance of any kind wherever it occurs." Now let's remember this. In July 2012, what happened was the Orange men came home, an absolutely outrageous determination to come home for 4 o'clock. They came home, had to get transport to come home. A small token number of them went up. And what happened? 2,000 Republicans come onto the Crumlin Road. They attacked Tweddell Avenue. They attacked the police. They set fire to a car which they pushed into police ranks, and they fired automatic gunfire trying to murder policemen. And what was the reward for that? Last year, the parade was banned.
What's the parade about, Stephen? Is the parade
about pick up on the point there. Was the violence rewarded?
No, the violence wasn't rewarded because, by the same logic, the White Rock riots from 2005, we could argue that parades that were subsequently allowed through nationalist areas in the White Rock or along the Crumlin Road were rewarding violence. It's coming back to the point. What is the parade about? Is it about having fun? Is it about a cultural expression? If it is, though, why does it need to involve marching past Catholic homes? That is the bottom line. It doesn't need to involve that. If it was a case, and the line William took there about this being a human right, does he then say that Republicans should be allowed to parade from Ligoneel along the very same road, the same Crumlin Road to Ardoyne? Should Republicans be allowed to parade from Ardoyne down the Crumlin Road to Carlisle Circus? It might only take 10 million. Would you support that parade? Would you support it?
The difference is The difference is...
There's no difference if it's a human right.
The difference is that for 150 years, lodges... Well, you can laugh all you like, but for 150 years, lodges from Ligoniel have paraded up and down there. Yeah. There is no history of people from Ligoniel village, as you're talking about, coming down the Crumlin Road.
So would you support...
That's not a tradition.
Would you or would you not support that parade he just talked about?
Well, no, because there's no tradition.
But you articulated the point that it was a human right.
So
if it's a human right, human right isn't tradition.
Let me get back to you this. Since they're denied the right of coming down the Crumlin Road, not down the Crumlin Road, and they walk down past a predominantly Unionist area, the full stretch of the area that they will pass. If they can't get down the Crumlin Road, which obviously, and Jerry Kelly said very clearly last year in July, they will stand there as long as they like, they won't get down. Now that's what he said. So the reality is, if they don't get down the Crumlin Road, do they get down the Cavehill Road? Do they get down the Cliftonville Road? Do they get down the Old Park Road? How do they get to join their brethren in the city centre for the main 12th of July procession? Or how do they get back?
The same way that they get to other parades. One of the parades that takes place along the Crumlin Road involves marching past Catholic homes to get on buses to go to Derry.
Okay.
To go to Derry. How did they get there?
And when they get on buses, and when they get on the buses to go back, as they have done on occasion, to go back to Ligoniel, what's happened? The buses have been attacked.
And that's wrong.
I stood in Donegal Street this year when there was a mass being delivered in the St Patrick's Chapel, and the apprentice boys came down and they recognised there was a mass going on. They didn't play music. They behaved in a very dignified and disciplined way, while people and politicians protested there while the mass was going ahead. And in the return leg, when they came back and they were meant to walk up, there was a funeral coming out of the Catholic chapel. And what did they do? They waited there until the cortege had passed, and then they put it up. Do you think that's the sort of way? That's the sort of the way that people should behave, and there should be reciprocation for those.
Here's the seriousness of what we're talking about. Is there going to be trouble this summer again? Is it just going to go round on that merry-go-round, that awful merry-go-round where no one wins?
No one wants to see trouble, Stephen. And I have to say that
people taking part in it want to see trouble.
No, that's not right at all.
The people taking part in the trouble?
For 328 days, there has been a camp, whether people like it or not, there's been a camp there which has been peaceful. Okay. And the camp would disappear tomorrow if the Orangemen, 3 lodges, 2 bands, 6 minutes along the Crumlin Road, a main arterial route in and out of this city, were allowed to process. Okay. The camp would go.
Well, look, it's not just parades that cause controversy. We're going to look at bonfires also. The Nolan radio show has been contacted by residents concerned about tires being stockpiled at bonfire sites. That's despite the fact burning tires is illegal on pollution and health grounds. Yesterday we filmed at 3 bonfire sites where tires are being collected: Mount Vernon, Rathcoole and Ballyearl. And we've commissioned research on potential health risks. Take a look at this. You've seen them on bonfires, but what chemicals are actually released when a tire is burnt? We've brought a tire to a lab for analysis, where first Dr. Jack Bloomfield takes a small section for testing. The sample of tar is burnt in a controlled environment, producing a strong, unpleasant smell. Then fumes from the tar are captured and treated with a solution which produces a coloured liquid. Finally, this liquid is injected into a machine for testing.
This peak, it's coming up as 96% sure that it's actually styrene. Styrene is toxic to the eyes, toxic to the skin, toxic to the gastrointestinal system. And then we also had ethyl benzene and xylene, extremely toxic. People shouldn't be exposed to them. If you look through the computer printout, there are naphthalene, ace-naphthalene, and these compounds are known as the PAHs. And people talk about PAHs as being carcinogenic.
We needed the results of our test analysed, so we took them to the toxicologist, Professor Vivian Howard, who's based at the University of Ulster.
When you burn tyres on bonfires, you're going to produce a number of predictable consequences. So irritant gases, lots of particles, and chemicals which potentially can cause cancer. If they're being burned in conjunction with other things such as wood that's been treated with preservatives, PVC plastic, where that's going to provide a lot of chlorine, then you're going to get dioxin formation. They get taken into the food chain, so the main way into the body is not actually breathing them. Dioxins are very persistent chemicals. They're some of the most toxic substances we know of. They stick around in the body for decades, and they can be passed on to the next generation in the breast milk and across the placenta. And that can lead, at high dose certainly, to abnormalities of development.
Well, joining me to discuss this, the Loyalist community worker Phil Hamilton and the Alliance councillor John Blair. Phil, your reaction to that? Would you like to be living beside a bonfire with those tires, given what you've just heard?
Well, Stephen, I think we'll have to be realistic, and that's that for generations, bonfires have had tires on it. Yes, there is a concern about the health risks, but for years across England, across France, across the world, bonfires are burned with different materials that give out different toxics.
But the pollutants go into the soil, and those pollutants are potentially harmful. So the only information I'm trying to bring to the community that's putting tires on the bonfires, I'm trying to use the evidence to say, look at what you're doing to your own community. Does that not make sense? Why would you do that to your own community?
Well,
to your own
need
children?
to ask the bonfire collectors, first of all, is why are they using tires? The reason why the bonfire collectors are using tires is because there's a lack of material at present with so many bonfires across Northern Ireland, and to fill the bonfires in. And people may like this or they may not like it, but these are the facts. Speaking to the bonfire collectors prior to coming to this programme, I asked them the hard questions, and that's what needs to be asked. They ask the bonfire collectors, first of all, why are they using tires for? And the reason being, there is a lack of material.
But do they want to endanger the people in their own community?
No one wants to endanger the local community.
Well, there is a potential danger. It's spelt out by scientists. It's there.
Community workers like myself across the province, Stephen, who don't get paid for the work that we do. And when we contact the statency agencies, no one wants to know about it, Stephen. And what happens? 10 years ago, I spoke to you about bonfires. 10 years later, Stephen, I'm sitting in this audience speaking to you again about bonfires. Proactive measures have to happen, and what we have to be as well, we have to be creative in our ideas. One of the ideas I brought to the table was, would there be somewhere, around about January time, council or housing executive to store material which could be put into the middle of the bonfire?
If someone from outside the Loyalist community brought in a potentially harmful substance and put it in the centre of the community that you represent, all hell would break loose, right? And your natural reaction would be, hold on a minute, you can't endanger our people. That would be the right reaction, wouldn't it?
Stephen, what we have to do, as I keep on saying, is be creative in our ideas. How are we going to address this, Stephen? We could sit here
Don't
and turn around
put tires
and
on
say
a
it's illegal.
bonfire.
But how do we address that,
That's how you
Stephen?
address it.
How do we address that? What we need to do is go back to basics. We need to engage with the bonfire collectors, and we have to come up with creative ideas. When I come up with creative ideas, council, housing executives, statency agencies are happy to have that conversation with me behind closed doors.
Let's see what we think in the audience. Guy here, go ahead, in the glasses, go ahead.
I'd just like to ask, why you said there's a lack of materials. Well, why are you not happy enough with just burning pallets? You know, I mean, it's bad enough you're polluting the environment, but it's the taxpayer that has to pay for the clean-up afterwards, not the ones running around the bonfire drunk.
Well, we're actually talking about tires here. And if you think about it as well, there's other materials that in bonfires give out toxic. So it's just not only the tires. Pallets itself, if you like that, Stephen, there has to be something in the middle. And this is what I'm turning around and saying. Why will statency agencies not come together, give an area where people can put stuff that can be burnt in the middle? I think for 100% that if that option was given to the bonfire collectors, you would see a reduction. But Stephen, also, what has to be given credit to is there's plenty of people across Northern Ireland who's working on this issue. Community workers, politicians, and bonfires, believe it or not.
You see the pictures we just showed you there,
yes, but Stephen,
in those three places? Do you see them?
You think 10, 15 years ago there is
also
less
against
tires
the law.
now
So what are the
being burnt in
statutory agencies doing
bonfires
letting it
and
happen?
what there is now?
It's against the law.
Stephen, there's a lot of things against the law.
Well, that makes it all right then.
It doesn't make it all right. There's a lot of things against the law, but what we need to try and do is come up with creative ideas to give alternatives.
Okay, guy here in the glasses, go ahead.
Stephen, bonfires in my estate have been burning for the last 30, 35 years with tires. There doesn't seem to be a problem. There seems to be a pressure point now about tires. You're saying it releases toxics into the soil.
I'm not, the scientists are.
Scientists are saying it's releasing toxics. That soil has been used for bonfires for 30 years. It hasn't moved, it hasn't been built on. I don't see why there's a pressure point on it. Also,
so the scientists are making it up?
No. We're saying it is releasing toxic into the soil. Soil's not being used for anything else but bonfires. That is a bonfire area, state. That's it. Second is, your scientists are now making things up in a laboratory. That's it. It's in a laboratory. It's not out in the open. They're doing this.
There's a reason why it's illegal. There's
Yes.
a reason why there's
Bonfires are illegal,
legislation there.
But the housing executive isn't claiming it's their land. They don't want to know. There's other statutory agents won't claim it's their land.
Like, look at these
Stop
shots
it.
we're currently showing. Look at this, William Humphrey. Do you think, seriously, that the community should be educated against this?
I think the first thing is people need to remember is that the number of bonfires that are actually held now on the 11th of July is vastly reduced. When I was a wee boy growing up in the Woodville, every street had a bonfire, and the number of them was much larger than now. What has happened across the city of Belfast, and I know this from my time in Belfast City Council, is that the council has worked with communities in the way that Phil has talked about. One of the pilots was Woodville Park a number of years ago, where there's a beacon. Now there's a beacon there because a site can actually be set aside for that at that time. The park has been redeveloped, and they're looking at a new site.
But there are kids that run bonfires and bonfire night.
Yeah, and I'll tell you something, Stephen. You have to be careful about this because, you know, I absolutely get the point about tires, but what is being seen, you see, is that people see in the Protestant and Unionist and Loyalist community that this is about a cultural war. You know, the flag in this city hall has been taken down by Sinn Féin, the SDLP and Alliance. We have a situation where parades are continually being attacked, Orange Halls are being attacked, and you know, people see this as an expression. And remember, the 11th of July bonfires are something which are hugely part of British society and have been for years. There were bonfires lit when William and Mary became the monarchs.
Should there be tires on bonfires?
Well, you see, what needs to happen is there needs to be a multi-agency approach to work with young people.
Was that a yes or no?
Which the point? Well, I'm answering your question.
You're not.
It's the point.
You're not. Should there be tires on bonfires?
Ideally, no. But we have to work with young people, and I'll tell you why they were put there.
What do you mean ideally, no? What about just no?
Well, yeah, but you know, we live in the real world, Stephen, not some ideal world. The truth of the matter is, young people put tires there because they burn for longer. I know, because I collected bonfire wood as well for years. That's why we're there. And we also need to get those who are tire companies to be responsible as well, because sometimes they are irresponsible when it comes to the distribution of tires.
John Blair?
Yeah, Stephen, to get back to the environmental issues and away from the old sectarian scare stories that we were about to revert to a moment ago there. The reality is there are bonfires the length and breadth of this country that cause no issues at all. People and members of all parties, including myself, are prepared to recognise and respect the cultural expression of that, and we work with those groups through councils and other statutory agencies to make sure the events are safe and enjoyable and family friendly and environmentally friendly. The reality in relation to the sites which we saw shown there are that there are practices which are illegal. You or I or any other member of this audience are not allowed to go out tonight and burn a pile of tires because it's illegal and because we are expected to live within the law. It is therefore reasonable to expect that other people should be expected to live within the law, and it's important that all groups involved engage with all of the agencies, all of the representatives to achieve that.
All right, John, thank you. Let's go here to the guy here. Go ahead.
Sorry, you were talking about people burning tires in their own communities. Mr. Humphreys talked about a cultural war. What about those of us that don't really give a stuff about nationalism or unionism, that have to put up with this every year? They pay our money every year and have to have it wasted on this, that have our freedom to travel restricted every year.
Well, someone's expression of their culture isn't money wasted, is it?
It is if you're cleaning it up. Would there not be a better way to do it? Where you don't have to cause pollution, where you don't have to have a monumental bill every year.
That's what I'm saying. Belfast City Council has been involved for a number of years working with communities across the city and across the community as well, because there are obviously some bonfires on the nationalist community as well. Look, I absolutely defend your right not to celebrate the 12th of July or the 11th of July. But look, bear in mind, 750,000 people in this city, in this country, and over 250,000 people in this city go out on the 12th of July. It's important to them, and we need to work at these things to ensure that we get the maximum amount of benefit out of the 12th of July. In terms of Orange Fest, that's what the Orange Order has been working hard on, in terms of tourism coming here and the benefit to this city from that. And yes, there are issues that have to be addressed. And what I'm saying to you is the Orange Institution, communities across this city, along with Belfast City Council and loyalist community leaders, have been working hard to address this.
All right, William, we've got to leave it there. Ladies and gentlemen, give William and Chris a round of applause, please.